Hello, folks. I am incredibly excited about this 2-episode series on how GitHub Copilot brings AI to all coders, programmers, and software engineers. In this particular episode, I'm going to focus on how to get this tool set up in 3 parts. First part, I'll talk about what is GitHub Copilot. Second part, I'll show how to get it installed and configured. And third part, I'll show a brief overview on how to interact with it. In episode 2, I will show a complete from idea to coded and developed solution entirely using GitHub Copilot. Trust me when I say it is mind-blowing and a game changer. But first, some legalities. The views and opinions expressed in this video are solely mine and not necessarily reflect the policy or position of any other agency, organization, my employer, or company. Okay, with that out of the way, as you can see here, GitHub Copilot is available for free. At the end of this episode, I'll mention the differences between the free and paid versions. In my opinion, the best way to get started with GitHub Copilot is to download VS Code. If you already have it, you can simply click on this link. If you don't, I will recommend that you get VS Code Insiders, as this provides you with the latest and greatest automatically. And seeing how insanely fast things are moving right now, I recommend it. As you can see here, you can download it for Windows, Mac, Linux, and even a web browser version. When I downloaded the Windows version, I did run into an issue I had to overcome. Once VS Code Insider was installing, it got stuck at the very last part, similar to what you see here. If you run into this issue, don't cancel the installation. Instead, open up the task manager and kill all PowerShell instances that show up. Once done, you'll quickly see the installation complete. Thank you, Peripheral Vision PD2, for sharing this workaround. Okay, this is what you'll see once it's done installing. Note, if you haven't worked in an IDE before, don't worry. It's still worth following along to see an example of how AI helps engineers code and build solutions faster. Upon opening VS Code, the first thing you see is the VS Code walkthrough, which tells you how to customize your IDE experience. Things like choosing your color theme, richer support for specific programming languages, tuning settings to your preferences, and providing you with video tutorials to get the most out of the IDE. From this view, you can see a tile that has the option to set up Copilot for free. Clicking on this opens up this visual on the right, asking us to sign into GitHub or GitHub Enterprise. If you don't have a GitHub account, you'll need to create one first. If you have a GitHub Enterprise account, even better. You'll benefit from all the features that Copilot has to offer, but you'll only want to use that when you're doing your work-related tasks. And for non-work related tasks, use your personal GitHub account. Once you are logged in, you'll see the Copilot walkthrough, which tells you a little about Copilot's capabilities, such as chat mode, making changes to a file using natural language, leveraging AI suggested code completion, and some other goodies. Closing that view, let me open up a file that has some text. A lot of this is collapsed, so don't pay too much attention to this just yet. This will be more relevant in episode 2. Let's take a look at the right side panel. Here you see 2 tabs, a chat tab and a Copilot edits tab. The main difference is that the chat mode is limited to Q&A interactions. It can't really take action on anything precisely, but it is very useful, like we'll see shortly. Whereas the Copilot edits tab allows Copilot to actually make changes to your specified file based on the request you provided to it. To start, let's click on this link to have Copilot explain to us what it can do. In addition to natural language, it breaks down the structure that it can also understand. There are these things called participants, a total of 4 of them described here. The first is the @workspace participant, with specific commands like explain, test, fix, new, and so on. Think of the workspace as the project with all of its encompassing folders, files, and content. From there, you can either use natural language to ask it something or to use any of those special commands earlier. The next special participant is the @VS Code, which can answer questions about VS Code as a whole. The two example commands it tells us about are the search command and the start debugging command. The other two participants are the @terminal and the @GitHub ones. The key takeaway here is to appreciate how these AI solutions are being designed, where there are specialized agents or participants that are focused on a particular skill, role, or capability. The response also tells us what syntax to use to supplement our request with additional context, in the form of files using the ## character. It also tells us to not overthink it, and to interact with Copilot as if you were talking to a real programmer. It provides an example of how one would normally talk to a person when writing code. First, by showing the code or content, then making refinements to it after having a discussion, and lastly, reviewing any suggestions that it provides. Towards the end of the response, it also informs us of another mechanism that we can interact with it, which is the inline chat session. Before I show how all this works, let's first finish making sure that things are fully set up. Let's go to the far left and hover over this icon that looks like 4 square blocks. This is called the extensions option that lets you manage and install a plethora of VS Code plugins or extensions that augments its built-in capabilities. Clicking on it only reveals the 2 extensions that were installed for GitHub Copilot in this instance. Let's click on the GitHub Copilot one first. Here you can find information about the extensions such as the version, when it was last updated, and resource links. If you want to disable auto-update or install a particular version, you can do so from here. I'll leave this as is for now. Let's head over to the GitHub Copilot chat extension. Notice how this one, though, has the pre-release version installed for me. If I wanted to switch this to the release version, I can do so by clicking on this button. But because of how quickly this technology is moving, folks, I will recommend to keep the pre-release version because it's just right now very valuable to be on top of the bleeding edge. Okay, next, let's click on the GitHub Copilot setting options, which is the gears icon here. Then select settings. Type into the search bar Copilot agent. You're going to want to make sure that you have chat agent enabled as you see above here. I'll talk about what that is very shortly here, but trust me, this is a must-have to take full advantage of Copilot's potential. Let's close out of the settings and now show the other ways that we can interact with Copilot in addition to the chat view on the right. I'll start by creating a new chat session by clicking on this plus icon. Notice at the bottom that because I have this file open, the chat already includes it as part of the request's context. To start, I'll ask it to explain what this file is about. It's worth noting that the majority of the file is collapsed, so you can't see the entire content, but Copilot does. And as we can see, it's producing a useful, human understandable description of the file. The next way to interact with Copilot is within a file directly via inline selection. Doing so will bring up this yellow icon, and clicking on it will show you a list of options you can choose from. In addition, you'll now see back in the chat window that the file name shows what lines are being specifically selected. This is useful to provide Copilot with a more granular selection for it to use as context. Let's go over to edit mode. Like I mentioned earlier, in edit mode, Copilot has the ability to actually make changes to a file based on your prompt. But the real impressive intelligence is when we change the mode to agent mode. This mode is a game changer. This mode will change the entire landscape on how code and solutions are developed. In this mode, you can tell Copilot to do simple or complex and vague requests, and Copilot will actually reason deeper in order to determine all of the necessary tasks, steps, and actions that it needs to do to accomplish the request. And it's going to bring you alongside as it is going through a chain of thought and reasoning asking you to confirm if what it is wanting to do is actually correct, which may span creating folders, creating files, making changes across multiple files, and even running terminal commands. Incredibly exciting stuff. So consider subscribing to my channel to avoid missing out on episode 2, where I show how I created a solution spanning a front-end app and a back-end app entirely using a prompt, providing it to Copilot's agent mode. Across all of these models, you can change the AI model being used. Right now, it's GPT-4o. Clicking on that drop-down will show you other model options that you have based on what license tier you have, which leads us to the last section of this episode. There are 4 pricing tiers for Copilot. The free tier will be a huge value, but it won't be sufficient if you want to take full advantage of its capabilities, mainly because of the number of requests you can make at 50 each month, as well as to the limited 2,000 auto completions each month. That's not a lot if you are developing a solution. Which brings us to the Pro tier. For only $10 a month, you'll get unlimited access to Copilot's most frequently used features. This is a no-brainer, folks, and the reason why it's the tier that I recommend for most. And it can even be free if you are a student, teacher, or a maintainer on an open source project. Another benefit to the Pro tier is that you have access to more models to choose from. At the time of this video, there are Anthropic Claude 3.5 and 3.7 models, and the OpenAI o1 model. But wait, there's more. You also get code review in GitHub, which is where Copilot can review and provide change recommendations from either VS Code or from github.com. And lastly, Copilot Workspace and pull requests, which allows many benefits, such as working on pull requests without having to switch back and forth between the GitHub website and your IDE. It gives you easy access to view, test, modify, and apply coding suggestions from Copilot's code reviews and Copilot Autofix, as well as reviews by human reviewers. It also gives you Copilot code completion suggestions directly on GitHub. And lastly, it enables you to build, test, and run your code directly from the workspace environment on GitHub. The last 2 tiers are targeted for those that rely on enterprise-grade rigor and to gain the ability to exclude any code that gets written from being used to continuously train the Copilot AI. All right, folks, this is it for episode 1. Please give this video a like and share it if you found it useful. And subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out once I release episode 2, where I unleash and showcase the power of GitHub Copilot Agent Mode. Thanks for tuning in, and till next time.